Claire had always prided herself on the routine. Wake up, go to work, go home. Day after day, she performed the tasks that others didn't think twice about: scrubbing floors, mopping hallways, and emptying trash cans in the high-rise offices of Sullivan Tower. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. And for Clara, that was enough. Or so she thought. At 30 years old, she had learned to accept her place in the world, where her only values seemed to be her ability to make the luxurious offices and conference rooms look spotless for the wealthy and successful people who occupied them. The executives who worked in the tower never noticed her, beyond the occasional dismissive glance or impatient sigh when she was in their way. Evan, one of the more insufferable executives, would often make snide remarks as he passed her. "Watch where you're going, cleaning lady," he'd sneer, his designer shoes clicking against the polished marble floors. Clara would smile weakly, even though the words stung. She had long stopped caring about the insults. After all, they were just a reflection of his arrogance, nothing more. To Evan, she was just an invisible part of the furniture. Clara did her job with quiet dignity, never drawing attention to herself. She had learned the art of blending in, doing her work without complaint, always unnoticed, always in the background. There were no compliments, no recognition for her hard work, but she made peace with that. She was simply surviving. Her personal life wasn't much different. Clara had no one to turn to. She had been estranged from her family for years, and while she did have a few acquaintances from work, they were no more than people she passed in the halls. She had never had a true partner, someone to rely on, someone who would see her as more than just a woman who cleaned up after others. She'd had a few relationships in the past, but they never lasted long. She had learned to be self-sufficient. There was no other way. Clara had made her peace with being alone. And so, her life continued in the endless cycle. Work, sleep, repeat. It wasn't much, but it was what she had, and she had come to accept it. Until one rainy evening, everything changed. It had been a long shift, the kind of shift that drained you physically and emotionally, and Clara was exhausted as she walked through the empty hallways of the 52nd floor. The rain outside had created a slick film on the polished floors, and Clara had already warned the building's maintenance about the hazard. But, as usual, the management had done nothing. Carrying a bucket full of soapy water, Clara slipped as she rounded a corner near the elevator. Her feet flew out from under her, and before she could even brace herself, her back slammed against the floor. The pain was immediate, sharp, searing, and unbearable. She let out a soft cry, but no one was around to hear. It felt like time slowed. For a moment, Clara couldn't move, her body frozen in pain. She had never felt anything like this before. She tried to sit up, but the pain only intensified. With great effort, she reached for her phone, dialing for help. The next thing she remembered was the cold of the hospital emergency room, the sterile smell of antiseptic, and the distant hum of machinery. The doctor's words were as devastating as the pain in her back. "You've suffered a serious injury, severe strain on your spine. You'll need to rest for weeks, possibly months, depending on your recovery." Clara couldn't believe it. Her livelihood, the one thing she had been able to rely on for so long, was gone. Without the ability to work, she faced financial ruin. The small savings she had weren't enough to cover months of medical bills and living expenses. With no family to lean on, no friends who could help her, Clara was left feeling completely alone in a way she had never felt before. Her apartment, once just a small, cozy space where she could retreat to after work, now felt like a prison. Clara had worked so hard just to keep her head above water, and now it seemed like all of it was slipping away. The office, the building, the people who never noticed her. They were now out of reach, and she couldn't help but wonder if her life would ever feel normal again. The idea of facing an uncertain future, with no income and no support, filled Clara with dread. What was she supposed to do now? Clara's injury had turned her world upside down. Weeks passed, and she found herself isolated, unable to work and sinking deeper into a financial hole. Her small savings, what little she had managed to set aside, were dwindling rapidly. Each day, Clara faced the harsh reality of being unable to pay her bills. The few calls she had made to local organizations for assistance had been met with dead ends, and the cold walls of her rundown apartment seemed to close in tighter around her. She spent most of her days lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything she had lost. The injury to her back kept her from even being able to go outside and get fresh air. She felt trapped, emotionally drained, and physically limited. The loneliness that had always lingered at the edges of her life now consumed her, pulling her deeper into despair. She no longer had the comfort of her job or the familiar routine to hold on to. The feeling of invisibility she had felt throughout her life had only worsened in her isolation. No family had reached out to help. The friends she had made at work had faded away, as she had suspected they would. Even her former colleagues at the office never so much as sent a text to check on her. Clara had always known her place in the world, but this emptiness was more than she could bear. One evening, as she sat alone in her small apartment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below, her phone rang. The name on the screen made Clara's heart skip a beat. It was Evan, the executive, who had treated her like a ghost for years. She stared at the phone for a moment, unsure of what to do. Could it be a prank? Maybe one of her old coworkers was messing with her, trying to have some fun at her expense. But she had no real reason to avoid answering, so she reluctantly pressed the accept button. Hello? Clara's voice was shaky. Clara, hey. Evan's voice came through, surprising her with his warmth. It's Evan from Sullivan Tower. I've been thinking about you. Clara's stomach tightened. She didn't understand why Evan would be calling. Why now? He'd barely acknowledged her existence before, only ever offering dismissive comments or occasional orders about cleaning the office. I heard about your accident, Evan continued, his voice now more serious. How are you holding up? Clara was caught off guard. Evan, the same man who barely spared a glance when he passed her cleaning carts, was asking about her well-being. It felt like some cruel joke. She didn't know what to say. She hesitated for a moment before answering, I'm managing. It's been tough. Evan's voice softened. I can imagine. Listen, I know we've never really had a chance to talk, but I wanted to help. I've noticed how organized you are. You've got a real talent for keeping things running smoothly in the office. I've got a proposal for you. Clara's brow furrowed. A proposal? Yeah, Evan said. I'd like to offer you a contract to work from home. I need someone to help with administrative tasks, like organizing schedules, managing documents, and handling basic office logistics. You've already done a lot of that at the office, and I know you have the skills. I think you'd be great at this. Clara's mind raced. Could this really be happening? Was Evan offering her a real opportunity? Or was this just some charitable gesture from a wealthy man trying to ease his own conscience? She couldn't be sure. Part of her felt like this was too good to be true, especially from someone like him, someone who had never once shown her respect beyond a fleeting acknowledgement. Evan continued, sensing her hesitation. I know this might sound unexpected, but I think you're more than capable. I'm offering you remote work, a way for you to get back on your feet without having to leave your home. And, Clara, I want you to know, I've noticed you. I see how hard you work, how organized you are. Don't let the job title fool you. For a moment, Clara said nothing. She was stunned. Was she being seen for the first time? All those years of cleaning the same floors, being invisible to everyone around her, suddenly felt like they were fading away. Clara had always told herself that she would never ask for handouts. But this wasn't a handout, it was an opportunity, even if it came from an unlikely source. I don't know, she replied, the doubt creeping in. I appreciate the offer, Evan, but why are you helping me? We barely know each other. Evan paused. I've been thinking about that too, honestly, Clara. Maybe I've been wrong. Maybe I haven't treated people like you the way I should have. But that doesn't matter now. What matters is that I'm offering you a chance. No one should be judged by their position, and you shouldn't be either. Take this opportunity to show me what you're capable of. What have you got to lose? Clara swallowed hard. Her mind was racing. This offer felt like the first real chance she'd been given in years. But part of her hesitated. Was this genuine, or was she just another person to Evan, someone he could control or use for his own benefit? Still, she had no other options. Clara took a deep breath. All right, I'll do it. I'll give it a try. Evan's tone changed, his voice warmer. Good. I'll have someone send over the details. And, Clara, thank you. I know it's a lot to take in, but I believe this is a step in the right direction. Clara hung up the phone, feeling a mix of hope and skepticism. She knew she couldn't let the opportunity slip away, even if it felt like a long shot. But one thing was clear. This was a chance to finally break free from the life of invisibility she had known for so long. Clara's first few weeks working remotely for Evan's company were a whirlwind. She had expected it to be overwhelming, handling tasks she had never done before, learning the ropes of a corporate environment she knew nothing about. But as soon as she started organizing schedules, sorting out the overwhelming backlog of emails, and streamlining office operations, Clara realized something she hadn't anticipated. She was good at this. She was efficient, quick to identify problems that had been lingering for months, and immediately practical in finding solutions. The more she worked, the more she started to see patterns, recognizing inefficiencies and gaps that others had overlooked. Soon, Evan, once the man who had barely noticed her, was asking for her input. It was like Clara had tapped into something she never knew existed within herself, an instinct for business strategy. When she submitted a report suggesting ways to improve workflow and reduce office costs, Evan was taken aback. He had always thought of her as just a cleaning lady, someone who was good at keeping things tidy. But this was different. Clara was offering insight that was valuable. Clara felt a rush of pride, but it was tempered by the nagging voice in her head. This can't be real. He's just humoring you. You don't belong here. But Evan surprised her again. Clara, this is excellent work. You've got an eye for this. I want you to start handling more responsibility. You've shown that you can do more than just manage the schedules. I'm going to have you take on a few projects. Clara was hesitant at first, unsure if she could live up to the new expectations. But something inside her clicked. She had always worked hard, but this was the first time she felt valued for it. As the weeks went on, Clara found herself thriving in this new role. She dove deep into business management in her free time, studying online courses, reading books, learning about leadership and strategy. She began to realize that her talent for organizing and problem-solving wasn't just a side skill. It was something she had the potential to excel in. She was starting to recognize her own value, the real Clara. And it wasn't tied to being the quiet, overlooked woman cleaning floors. But the shift was not without its challenges. Evan's attitude towards her started to change, and at times, Clara wasn't sure how to react. He had started treating her differently, not as just a worker, but as someone who was integral to the company. His tone had softened. He began asking for her opinions during meetings. He invited her to take part in strategy sessions, discussions she would have never imagined herself being a part of before. At first, Clara struggled with the newfound attention. She had never been in the spotlight. She wasn't used to being acknowledged, let alone praised. The more Evan complimented her, the more she felt like an imposter. The woman who had spent years in the background, now being treated like an equal. It felt like too much, too fast. But, as time went on, Clara started to notice something else. Her colleagues, though she had once cleaned up after, began to respect her. They started coming to her for advice on logistics, workflow, and even on project ideas. They sought her out for team collaboration. People who had never given her a second glance before now saw her as a valued colleague, someone whose input was crucial to the success of their projects. Clara's once quiet confidence was slowly transforming into a genuine self-assurance. She was no longer the invisible woman who cleaned the bathrooms and wiped down the boardroom tables. She was Clara, the woman who could run a project, solve a problem, and lead a team. And the most surprising part? She began to feel seen. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just working to survive. She was working to thrive. And as Clara sat at her desk late one night, looking at the list of projects she was now managing, she realized something that made her heart swell. She had done this. It wasn't Evan's doing. It wasn't luck. It was Clara's own hard work, determination, and skills that had gotten her here. She was no longer just a cleaning lady. She was a woman of value, with a voice that mattered, and that made all the difference. Clara's hard work and newfound confidence paid off when she received a surprising offer from Evan. After months of proving her abilities organizing and strategizing, Clara was officially promoted within the company. Her role shifted from a remote administrative assistant to someone involved in executive decision-making. It was a monumental step in her career, a promotion Clara never imagined for herself. Evan's offer to lead a team felt surreal. He acknowledged her contributions to the company with a simple, yet deeply meaningful statement. "You've earned this. You've proven yourself, Clara. You deserve this leadership role." Clara was speechless. The woman who had spent years cleaning floors in the building, who had been disregarded by those around her, was now being given a seat at the table. This was the validation she had longed for, but never dared to believe could happen. Her efforts had not only changed her own life, but also made her a respected leader in the company. But despite the excitement and sense of accomplishment, Clara couldn't escape the weight of the betrayal that had been hanging over her for so long. As her career soared, she began to reflect on the people who had once abandoned her, the ones who had never believed in her. Her family had always treated her as an afterthought, not even caring enough to check in after her injury. Her parents had never once supported her dreams, nor had they shown any concern when she was struggling. They had chosen to walk away from her when she needed them most, while her brothers continued to receive their share of attention. Clara's self-doubt had been fueled by their neglect, their inability to see her for who she truly was. Then there was Evan, the man who had once treated her like nothing more than a janitor. Though he had been kind and supportive now, Clara couldn't forget the way he had dismissed her before. She couldn't forget how he had looked down on her and made her feel invisible, just another person to clean up after him. But even with these lingering resentments, Clara realized that holding on to anger and bitterness would only hold her back. She didn't need their validation anymore. She had created her own success. The forgiveness wasn't about Evan or her family. It was for herself. As Clara stood in front of the large glass windows of the company's high-rise office, looking out at the sprawling city below, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had overcome the limitations that others had placed on her, and more importantly, she had overcome the self-doubt that had crippled her for so long. She didn't need anyone's approval to prove her worth. She had earned her place at the table, not by playing by others' rules, but by creating her own path. And now, she was finally valued for who she truly was. Clara smiled softly to herself. The view from the top wasn't what she had expected, but it was exactly what she needed. Her journey, once filled with struggle and uncertainty, had transformed into one of empowerment and self-realization. Clara was no longer invisible. She had carved her own identity and built a new life. A life where she was not just a cleaning lady or a forgotten worker, but a leader, a woman whose value was determined by her own effort and belief in herself. Clara's rise within the company was undeniable. With her new leadership role, her influence grew far beyond what she had ever imagined. She wasn't just organizing schedules or managing remote tasks anymore. Clara was making critical decisions, leading teams, and shaping company strategy. She had become a central figure in the company's success, and her contributions were being recognized by everyone, from the executives to the janitorial staff. But what truly set Clara apart was her belief that talent can come from anywhere, no matter someone's background. She has seen firsthand how the underestimated and overlooked could bring invaluable contributions if given the opportunity. Clara wasn't content with just her own success. She was determined to help others who were in the same position she had once been. As her career blossomed, Clara began to take on the role of a mentor. She specifically sought out those who had been passed over, the people who, like her, had been ignored and undervalued by the company. She worked closely with them, offering guidance, encouragement, and most importantly, believing in them when no one else would. One of her first mentees was Marissa, a talented analyst who had been a cleaning staff member for years before transitioning into an office position. Clara saw in Marissa the same drive and potential she had once had. With Clara's guidance, Marissa quickly advanced within the company, showing the world that potential doesn't care about your job title. Clara became a living testament to the idea that true success comes not from status, but from belief in yourself and hard work. The small-town girl who had once spent her days cleaning floors and navigating the shadows was now leading a successful company, proving that anyone, no matter their past or circumstances, had the power to rise. And though Clara had always believed that success was tied to money or titles, she had come to understand something deeper. True success wasn't about how much wealth you accumulated or the title that followed your name. It was about the impact you made on others, the lives you touched, and the person you became through your struggles. She had learned that the magic in her story wasn't about some dramatic twist of fate or a sudden windfall. No, it was much simpler and much more profound than that. The magic came from her own resilience, the strength she found in believing in herself when everyone else had counted her out. It was about choosing to rise, no matter how many times life knocked her down. Clara's journey was no longer about proving herself to others or winning their approval. It was about living with integrity, self-respect, and purpose. And in doing so, she had created a life that was far more meaningful than the one she had once dreamed of. One where she didn't need to be seen by others to know her worth. As Clara sat in her office, looking out over the city skyline, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The quiet, invisible woman, who had once cleaned the very floors she now stood on, had found a new path, one paved with self-confidence, purpose, and a deep sense of fulfillment. In the end, Claire's growth wasn't just in her career, it was in the person she had become, a woman of strength, of courage, and of infinite potential. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt seen, not by others, but by herself.